Hello world, Leo here, and this is the 8th installment of the Python from 0 to 1 series. And today, we'll be learning about conditional statements and the if-else block. So let's just start with a super basic example. So firstly, I'm going to define a fruit is equals to apple. And next, I'm going to type if, this is a Python keyword, if fruit is equal to apple, colon, and here I have an indent consisting of 4 spaces, print apple juice. You might have noticed that I use a double equal sign here. So this is actually a comparison operator that measures for equality. So this actually checks if our fruit variable is equal to the string apple. So there are more comparison operators, but we will cover that later on. So I'm going to run this, and this is what we'll get. So here we print apple juice, and this is because of the if statement. So here I'm going to remove apple and replace it with orange. And right now, if I run this, I'm going to get nothing. So here, this if statement will actually check if fruit is equals to apple. And if this evaluates to true, Python will execute whatever statement that happens inside the if block. So let's change this back to apple. And next, let's add a else statement. So else and colon. And similarly, here I need to have an indent of 4 spaces. So after my indent, I'm going to print no apple juice. So here, the else block is actually an optional block, and we don't have to include it if we don't want to. The else block will run if the if block does not run, which means that if this statement evaluates to true, the if block will run. But if this statement evaluates to false, the else block will run instead. So let's test this out. So if I run this, I'm going to get apple juice. But if I change this to Snapple, so fruit no longer equals to apple, and I'm going to get no apple juice. So here, one thing to note is that whatever that's indented here belongs to the if block, while whatever that is indented here will actually belong to the else block. Next, let's add a bunch of else if blocks. So this is how we add an else if block. So we add it in between the if and the else block. So ELIF. So after the else if, we add another condition. So fruit is equals to orange. Same thing, we have to add an indentation, and after our indentation, we print, let's say, orange juice. And let's change this to no juice. So let's change this back to apple, and let's run this. And because fruit is now apple, we'll get apple juice. Similarly, if we change our fruit to orange, we will get orange juice. And if fruit is neither apple nor orange, the else block will run, and we will get no juice. So one important thing to note is that we can have as many else if blocks as we want, as long as we put it in between the if block and the else block. So for now, do keep in mind the syntax of the if else block, and also the if, else if, and else blocks. So next, let's talk about comparison operators. So first, let's take a closer look as fruit double equals to apple. So let's actually print this, and here we'll get a false. So this is a Boolean value, and for those of you who don't remember, a Boolean value is either a true or a false. So here, fruit is equals to apple evaluates to false because fruit is actually orange 1, 2, 3. However, if we change fruit back to apple, this will now evaluate to true. So for basic comparison operators, let's take a look at this 7. So the first double equals will actually test for equality. So here, note that we cannot just use the single equal sign because the single equal sign is actually the assignment operator. So here, the assignment operator assigns a variable to a value, but does not check for equality. So in order to check for equality, we must use the double equal sign. So here, once again, if we print fruit double equals to apple, we will get a true. And next, let's talk about the not equals. So here we use the exclamation mark and equals. So this statement, which uses the not equals operator, will actually evaluate to true if fruit is not equals to apple. However, if fruit is equals to apple, it will actually evaluate to false. So this is the opposite of the equal statement. So if I run this currently, I'm going to get false. But if I make fruit equals to something other than apple, I'm going to get a true. So next, let's talk about the greater than operator. So I'm going to create a number is equals to 5. And I'm going to print number is greater than 3. So here, number is 5 and it is in fact greater than 3. So number greater than 3 will actually evaluate to a true. And conversely, let's say we set number is equals to 1. And if we run this, number greater than 3 will evaluate to a false because number which is 1 is not greater than 3. However, one thing to note here is that if we set number is equals to 3, we will still get a false. And this is because 3 is not greater than 3. And next, let's talk about the greater than or equal operator. So I use a right arrow, and next I have an equal sign. So this checks whether our number is greater than or equals to 3. And this will return true if our number is 3 or above. So let's run this and try. And here we have true. Similarly, we have the less than operator. And let's set number to 2. So 2 is actually less than 3. So if we run this, we are going to print a true. However, if we set number to 20, we are going to get a false instead because 20 is not less than 3. And similarly, if we set number is equals to 3 and we use the less than operator, we will get a false because 3 is not less than 3. Conversely, if we decide to use the less than or equal operator, 3 is less than or equals to 3, and therefore this will evaluate as true. Next, let's talk about our last comparison operator here, the in operator. So I'm going to print A in apple. So this checks whether the substring A is actually inside the substring apple. So if I run this, I'm going to get a true. However, let's say I use B instead. So B is not inside apple in any way. So if I run this, I'm going to get a false. So here, the in keyword is actually pretty useful when we move on to basic data structures such as lists and dictionaries. So we'll touch more on this later. So thanks for watching, and hopefully this was clear and easy to understand. See you in the next one.